Hi everyone, this is Mistress Sweet Pea, Mistress of Tech, and thank you for tuning in to another one of my podcasts today. We are filming live at Bill Hedges' studio here in Lyons, Nebraska. This is the infamous Lost in Space, replica Lost in Space starship. So as you can see some of the lights in the background, and you can see the rest of it. It is absolutely gorgeous. So I want to give a shout out to Bill for letting me use his spaceship today for the podcast. Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. So today we're going to talk about something completely different. We're going to talk about decades, and I mean 70s, 80s, and 90s. I know you're probably rolling your eyes thinking, oh gosh, who cares? But I mean, we all feel nostalgic at times, and today I'm feeling nostalgic. I was born in the 70s, so I don't remember much about it, but I remember bits and pieces towards the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. I graduated high school in the 90s, so let's do something different today. So we're going to talk about the decades and compare the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So for the 70s, I was born in 74, so I don't remember much towards until the year 79, 80, but the 70s were about creativity, individualism, and cultural revolutions and reinventions. What made the 70s great? Well, where do I begin? The 70s was a creative explosion across the world. In terms of music, you had disco, funk, soul. You had Studio 54 in New York City. There was so much. It was a rise of personal expression. Fashion embraced individuality. You had bell bottoms, afros, bohemian styles, bold patterns. People experimented with identity in ways that felt new and liberating. I mean, women were coming into themselves, were becoming more outspoken and more in control of themselves and their behaviors. And what I mean by that is women were like, no, I'm standing up for myself, and women were taking control. So I love that. The birth of modern blockbuster cinemas. We had Jaws, Star Wars. All those movies basically changed the how movies were presented because of the special effects, sounds, and the way the message of the movies. Like the movies were really coming out then. And also the 70s brought home new technology. So we started seeing the beginnings of home technologies, microwaves, video game consoles. Who doesn't remember Pong? I love Pong. Personal computers appeared. It was the first time technology felt like it was entering everyday life. Even though technology like that existed well even into the 50s, in the 70s it started coming out more. It was making more of an appearance in homes. So it was the 70s also were a little more slower, grounded lifestyle. They didn't have no digital distractions. People spent more time outdoors, socializing in person, engaging with hands-on hobbies. Kids were out riding their bikes. They weren't sitting around playing on phones or, in front of a computer. The street lights came on, you went inside the house. That was it. I remember that growing up, and that was the best. I'm proud of my childhood because of the fact that I got to live it before this social media craze took over and technology took over, and nowadays kids communicate with each other through a cell phone or through a computer. That's not fun. I'm sorry, it just isn't. It's better to see someone in front of you and talk to them. Like that's how I remember growing up. Technology was exciting, but again in the 70s it was also limited. Early computers were still expensive, extremely expensive, and they were confusing. Most computers you found most of the computers in businesses and corporations. Video games were primitive. Home entertainment systems were minimal. They were starting to come out, but they had a hefty price tag that most people at that time could not afford. But you have to remember the dollar bill, the United States dollar bill in the 70s was different. It's different compared to today. So what was maybe a dollar then is probably, who knows, probably like $50 today for all I know. I'm just guessing. I don't know that exact answer. But everyday life was fun. Like you had no internet, no smartphones, no streaming. Everything required effort. it's planning, timing. Like if you wanted to go on a field trip, or you wanted to not a field trip, if you wanted to go to the store or the movie theater, you would call up, or you would go drive by and see when the shows were playing. Like nowadays, you can go on your phone and look at the times. I don't want to do that. I want something. I want to be able to go and check it out myself, make a phone call. But things are different today. But trends sometimes went overboard. Shag carpets, wood paneling, avocado look at appliances like those, like avocado green, like kitchen sets or couches, or even like perfect example like this right here, like these chairs. Those are green chairs. So those type of chairs, that's what I'm talking about. Like those avocado type green chairs, those scream 70s. So entertainment access was also restricted. So basically, if you missed a TV show, like let's say you were watching Saturday morning cartoons, and one of the cartoons you want to watch was, you missed it, you'd have to wait till the following Saturday to see it. We didn't have, back then, we didn't have the ability to go in and record it. Again, we didn't, depending on what time, we didn't have the ability to go in and record it and watch it. It was different. Like if you missed it, you had to wait for the next week to see the show. Life in the 70s also moved at a slower, more of an analog pace. People spent more time outdoors, more face-to-face interactions, more time doing things manually. Families having dinner together without without cell phones on their table. People actually having conversations. Imagine that word, conversations, which unfortunately, I hate to say, doesn't really much exist anymore these days like it used to. Nowadays, everything is done through a form of digital media, cell phone, laptop. There's no actual human intervention and conversations, which I believe a lot of things we could benefit from today if we had that back. Households relied on landlines, handwritten notes, and in-person visits. You wrote a grocery list, and you would go get whatever you need at the grocery store. Nowadays, you can just go in and put it on your phone. The other thing that is different today, back in the 70s, parents would write a note to give their kids to go to the corner store and pick up a pack of cigarettes. And they would do it back then. Back then, you could do that as a kid. Hand the guy behind the counter the note with the money, pay the cigarettes, and take them back home. You can't do that today. Like today, you can't even, a kid can't even go into a bar with their parents and have a soda because they think that you're abusing their child or whatever. That's a whole different subject. But cooking was still a major daily activity. Though microwaves were starting to become more popular, people cooked at home. There were more parents were cooking at home. They were having sit-down family dinners with their parents. I miss that. I really do. It's a shame that it's not like that anymore. Shopping meant going to the local stores. Malls were starting to become popular in the 70s, but you weren't shopping. Nowadays means going to Amazon or to eBay. Nowadays back then shopping was going to it still means going to the grocery store today, but you have to specify, because if you say in the 70s, I'm going shopping, people are going to think you're going to the grocery store. If you say that today, they're going to say, oh, eBay, Amazon, grocery store? Which one is it? So kids played outside for hours, bikes, parks, neighborhood games. Back then, I remember going 2 blocks away to a nearby park. Parents didn't have to worry about their kids. The kids knew when the streetlights came on, you had to go home. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But, also, kids checked in back then with their parents once in a while. They don't do that anymore now, because most of the time the kids are indoors on their computers, which is not good. Music was a central part of life. You had vinyl records, live concerts, 8 tracks. Oh my gosh. I remember my father's car, he had an 8-track when I was little. And it was just, I don't know, it's just such a different time period. TV only had a handful of channels, so basically families watched TV together. Back then in the 70s, you didn't have what you have today. You had limited channels, and you could only watch what was available. So if Johnny Carson was the only thing on and everything else was off the air, either you watched Johnny Carson or you shut the TV off. Like, families would gather around and watch TV together. They don't do that anymore. Movies were events. You went to the theater or or you missed it. Like, if the movie came out, like E.T. If E.T. came out and you went to the theater, great. You watch it. But once it's gone from the theater, you missed it. That was it. So it was like a one-time thing. They didn't have a lot of depending on where you lived, they didn't show movies on regular standard channels like they do today. Hobbies were different. Sewing, woodworking, photography, record collecting. Back then, kids. I knew people who were collected rocks. I knew women who sewed. Like people had hobbies, like actual hobbies that you could go that didn't involve digital media. Like you could actually go and do something and enjoy it. Like you could go to a bookstore, or you could go out play outside with your friends, like create things. I remember when I was little, I was a huge tomboy. I remember we would build like little mud pies, and we would try to convince people that it was dark chocolate to see if they would eat it. I mean, I know that's pretty gross now, but I mean, it was fun. We were all together. We weren't sitting in front of like right in front of a cell phone or a laptop. I mean, that's the problem. Is kids need to be outdoors, not stuck under digital media, not stuck behind a computer. Anyways, so we talked about all that convenience and early computers, video games. Cars were less reliable. It required more maintenance. Back in the 70s, of course, people still used leaded gas at the time up to a certain point. Then they stopped. But the cars were built differently then. Today they're more computer based, so a lot of stuff can be diagnosed quicker than they could back in the 70s. So again, I mean, there's positives, pros and cons to the 70s, but for me, there's more pros and cons. So quality of life, deep personal connections and community, less noise, few distractions, more presence. People got together and did things. Communities got together and took action when things weren't going well. Nowadays, everything's hiding behind an email. People don't get out and do things like they used to. Technology was exciting, but again, it wasn't really helpful yet. Everything took time, communications, errands. But that was what made the 70s beautiful. It was a different type of life. It was a little more challenging just for some or for most people. But people overall got to do something. They got to get together. Communities got together. They worked at things. School communities, like teachers, parent-teacher conferences. Like people got together and did things. Like nothing was hidden. Like nowadays for school, not elementary, just school in general. Like kids in school today, they get their homework emailed to them, or everything's done on a laptop that the school gives them. Kids today don't even know how to cursive write. I mean, that was a requirement. I remember even going to school, you had to learn how to cursive write. I did that. I did a test to someone about a couple of years ago, and I wrote instructions in cursive. They couldn't understand one word I said. They couldn't read it because I didn't understand it. I had to literally write every word out. Like cursive writing, it's writing, but see, everything's done on a computer today, so it's different. 70s had, but don't get me wrong, 70s also had their bad moments too, so it's not always perfect. I mean, there were things in the 70s that were bad that we're grateful we have today, so it's a little bit of both. But now we're going to switch over to the 80s. I love the 80s. That's my favorite decade. Of course, I grew up in the 80s. So I was around before YouTube, before when kids would get bullied, before all that was ever on YouTube. So 80s was great. Pop culture became global. MTV, the birth of MTV was revolutionized and paved the way for music artists and videos. It turned Madonna, Michael Jackson, they all became worldwide icons. And MTV and music helped funnel all of that. Technology became fun and personal. Home computers were now common, when I say home computers, there were some home computers, but there were also the Atari. I love the Atari 2600. Oh my gosh, I miss that. Video games exploded. Walkmans let people take music anywhere with you. And I remember Walkmans when they first came out. They were, I remember, because I wanted one so badly. They were like $300. I'm like, that's insane. Because imagine $200 or $300 in today's money. No, thank you. We'll pass. Excuse me. VCRs made movie nights possible at home. So now, with the birth of VCRs and Laserdiscs, people could watch movies at home and they didn't have to go to the movie theater, which unfortunately hurt the movie theater industry, but not that much. Excuse me. Then we have fitness and lifestyle trends that started booming. Have you noticed women started going to doing aerobics? They wear those leg warmers, colorful leg warmers with their bandanas, and it was just really fun back then. Excuse me, a little tickle in my throat. Fashion. Fashion was fearless. Neon color, like the neon bracelets, shoulder pads, hair. Now, the hair. For those of you that don't know about the 80s, which I'm sure most of you know, right now my hair is straight. In the 80s, I had bangs, and I remember curling them up. Aquanet. Oh my gosh, I used so much Aquanet. It was just insane. I went through like maybe 2 cans every 2 weeks, like to keep that puffiness up on your hair. Now when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But back then, that was cool. You were cool if you put your hair like that, and you wore your jeans and you rolled them up on the bottom. And I mean, girls and ladies from the 80s loves Baby Soft cologne. Remember that? Oh my gosh, I love that stuff. Anyways, so continuing on. Some of the things that didn't work so well in the 80s was that sometimes we had excess, sometimes overshadowed substance. Bigger wasn't always better. So there was a lot of flack about people wearing their hair too much because they're using too much hairspray. And then back then the whole thing was you're ruining the ozone layer by using all that hairspray, especially Aquanet. Now, I don't have any research that indicates if that's true or not. I'm just going based off what I remember from the 80s. And people would think, well, bigger hair doesn't mean better, bigger this, bigger that, because in the 80s, things were starting to become bigger cars. People were having bigger entertainment systems. You had boom boxes like the size of this that took like 6 D batteries that only lasted for an hour. Then you had to go out and buy some more batteries. So bigger wasn't always better, was what they did back in the 80s. That's what one of their mottos was. Technology was still clunky. So cell phones did start to exist in the early 80s. However, they were clunky. They were like, a cell phone today is small, like a nice convenient one. Back then, cell phones were this big clunky device, and you had to it was impossible. And probably the battery life on that, I can only imagine, was probably like 2 hours, if that. I mean, I'm guessing. So they were too clunky. Computers were slow. Sometimes video games crashed. Again, the memory that they had back in the 80s was back then was considered a lot. Today it's considered nothing. It's like trivial. Media could feel over commercials. Basically, consumerism. So many commercials. Everything had a commercial. There was like TV show. You were watching your favorite TV show, and then you had like 7 commercials before it would come back on. Like in the 80s, TV commercials, I mean, they existed all the time, but it seemed like in the 80s, like there was so much. Like, I love Dallas, especially Who Shot JR. That was awesome. I love that. Anyways, I remember when it was Who Shot JR episode, and they had like 4 commercials in a row. Like, come on, like, I don't want to see the commercials. I just want to know who killed JR. Anyways, but then again, also with the 80s, and this is the same with every decade, trends were moving fast. So one day, neon bracelets were popular, the next day they were not. So like trend fashions, things were progressing very rapidly. So what was popular in 1980, by 1985 is gone, done. So, but today, in this day and age, in 2026, a lot of that stuff is starting to come back a little bit. Not as much, but it is starting to come back. So the 80s were felt energetic, bold, full of possibilities. People were embracing new technologies. They were embracing lifestyles. Like cable TV exploded. So unfortunately, I grew up in a household where I didn't have MTV. So, but cable TV did explode. People had choices. So instead of back in the 70s where you had like 5 TV channels, in the 80s you had probably 20 to choose from. So there were more possibilities. Shopping malls were social hubs. So, I mean, come on, who didn't go to the mall on a Friday night with their friends to see if that cute guy was going to be there or that cute girl was going to be there? I mean, it's like that was fun. That was vibrant. I mean, I used to love Friday nights going to the mall. Even if you didn't buy anything, even if you only had $5 with you, enough to get maybe a slice of pizza and a Coke, hey, that was fun. I mean, who didn't like that? Fast food chains were growing rapidly. You had more possibilities than you did in the 70s. Blockbuster videos came out. Arcades were packed. Arcade games almost everywhere. And who could forget the Cabbage Patch Kids craze? I remember friends of mine, their parents waiting for hours, like it's 4 a.m. in line just to get the new Cabbage Patch doll for their kids for Christmas. It was crazy back then, but when you think about it now, it's like, wow, like that was pretty cool. I would have done it, but I was too young. So, anyways, and so technology, we talked about that. Quality of life, more entertainment, sense of optimism, more mobility, cars improved, travel became more accessible. So cars were, in the 80s, cars were a little more with the technology at the time, so cars it wasn't as stressful, like things were more easier to maneuver and get around. And now we're turning into the 90s. The 90s were innovation and identity and digital. It was a digital turning point for us. So the 90s was the birth of the internet era. Dial-up AOL, you've got mail, or you've got post, or however. Early websites, email transformation communications. It was the first time the world felt like they were connected with each other. So, I don't know about you guys. I graduated from high school in 92. I remember getting my first desktop computer, in 95, and at the time, they said, oh, we get all this memory and stuff, and I had AOL pre-installed, and I had a disc with it as well, and I thought I was like the biggest thing. I was like, wow, I'm like, I'm this big shot person. I got AOL, and I remember going to the AOL chat rooms, and now I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? But I don't even think AOL's around anymore. I'm not sure. It was the golden age of music diversity, grunge rock, Nirvana. I love Nirvana. Kurt Cobain, may you rest in peace. I love Nirvana. They revolutionized the grunge scene of the 90s. I mean, I love metal rock and heavy metal rock and the hair bands, but they were starting to fizzle out. That was the 80s, and that was starting to fizzle out a little bit. Grunge came in and took over and exploded. And Nirvana just exploded all over. It was the best. I love their songs. They opened up Nirvana. If it wasn't for Nirvana, we wouldn't have had some of those bands of the 90s that we have today. Hip hop became dominant. R&B, pop, alternative music, they all have thrived. Boy bands, girl groups, they came about. I'm sorry, I'm still a New Kids on the Block fan. I love you, Jordan. Jordan was always my favorite. Oh my gosh, I just love Jordan. Anyways, backtracking on that one. 90s, we still had New Kids on the Block in the 90s, but we also had a couple of other boy bands as well that came out. Backstreet Boys is one of them I can think of at the moment, but we had 98 Degrees, so we had quite a bit there going on. And then movies blended storytelling with technology. We had Jurassic Park as a great example of that. Titanic, The Matrix, Toy Story. Video games reached new heights. We had Nintendo, PlayStation, Sega Genesis. They had 3D world graphics. I mean, that was like considered high tech back then. Nowadays, it's nothing, but back then that was a big deal. Fashion embraced authenticity. Grunge, minimalism, hip hop, streetwear. Who could remember MC Hammer? You can't touch this. Remember the video with those parachute pants? Oh my gosh, I never owned one, but I used to love spandex pants. I used to wear those a lot in the 90s. It was comfortable. Just put them on, and you didn't have to fuss around with the jeans or anything like that. I loved it. It was perfect. But there was also a balance between analog and digital life. Kids still played outside. So, and landlines were still popular. And they still watched Saturday morning cartoons, but also digital appliances started working into that. So you could see, like, by the early 90s, the kids were still using all of that, like the technology. Like, I mean, they were still landlines, coming home when it got dark. They were still watching Saturday morning cartoons, but things were starting to become more digital. Like, things were starting to slowly transition before our eyes. Early internet frustrations. People loved the internet, but then it started boggling down. Couldn't connect. Someone would call in when you were trying to connect. There's a lot of stuff like that happening, which is possible. Which was possible at the time. That's very common. So, we're going to quick recap of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So the 70s, slow, grounded, analog time period. It was fast, energetic for the 80s, balanced for the 90s, but not overwhelming. Each decade has their own attributes and, well, their own good things, good qualities and bad qualities. So it just depends. But overall, I love the 80s. 80s are true to my heart. I grew up. I'm proud to say I'm a Gen Xer. I was around before the internet. So anything I did, if I ever did, which I didn't, before the internet, is not out there. So, anyways, not even just that. Just I'm proud to have been riding my bike as a kid and coming in when the street light came on, and it's just I just want to say to those kids out there today, to the parents, please try to get your kids to go out there and play with each other. Have kids go out and explore, ride their bikes, meet new people. I mean, I know it's a different world than it was then, so I get it. You need to be more cautious today, but it really, really, it's a shame to see kids so much relying on technology when there's so many things out there to do. I mean, human interaction is very important. But anyways, I just want to say that I feel for the kids today, because I wish they could have been around when I grew up, when Gen Xers like us were growing up, where we had that ability to do that. Even millenniums too. Anyways, on that note, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. I really appreciate this. And please check out my podcast on YouTube, which is Mistress Sweet Pea. I really appreciate that if you just give me a like or thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Anyways, on that note, have a great day. Bye, everyone.